In your book, in fact, you point to human rights, Michael, as a kind of language that people in academia or places like the United Nations employ, these sort of global moral standards. And of course, we had the UN Declaration, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I believe that was 1948.
Correct.
So based on this idea of whether or not there is universal human rights, how relevant do you think that piece of paper is today?
It's a great question and a difficult one. I think that the Universal Declaration has spawned or created and made possible what, let me get fancy for a moment, the constitutionalization of rights around the world. Thanks to the Declaration of Human Rights, if you go to the Constitution of South Africa, every South African has rights. You go to Brazil, they've got rights. Some of the reason for that is that we have a thing called the Universal Declaration, and every constitution in the world took something from that declaration. So that's the good news. The bad news is that we live in a world of nation states that defend their power, defend their territory, build walls and borders. And these states are very resistant to criticism from the outside. A lot of states beat people up, torture people, imprison people, and they don't want to be told from the outside you're doing something wrong. They're saying what's right for us inside this government is our business, not your business. Human rights is the story that tells us that what happens to people in other countries is always our business, and we should be concerned if someone is tortured or disappeared or murdered or abused. But states, the governments in power are very resistant to that. So in 1948, we had this vision that we'd have a world tied together by a common set of standards. 80 years on, we're still struggling to get there. There's still huge resistance to the human rights ideal. But another way to look at it is that the history here is young. We've got a long way still to go. And I feel optimistic about one thing, is that there's nothing relative about human abuse. So the idea that the problem with human rights is that we have relative standards across the world, that's not the problem. The problem is state power. Governments and people in power and authoritarian regimes resisting the truth of human rights. I think the world now accepts that there's some things that are just right for everybody and some things that are just wrong. But governments and states are still resisting that truth, and that's where the battle is now.